Kyle blocked our ranch gate for 72 hours straight. Grandpa didn't argue. He just filed a salvage claim and dropped Kyle's truck into a legally active ditch. Karen screamed. The sheriff shrugged. HOA learned two things that day: don't mess with a carter, and always read the fine print near muddy water. They say small towns are peaceful until HOA Karen gets involved. I moved back to Cedar Hill thinking I'd be helping Grandpa run the ranch, not fending off a guy with a clipboard and a superiority complex. My name's Eli Carter. I'm 24, just graduated from A&M with a degree in agricultural management, and 2 months ago I packed my life into a dusty Silverado and came home to work side by side with the man who raised me, Walt Carter. Grandpa Walt is 78, has a handshake that could crush pecans, and doesn't say much unless it's about tractors, rain forecasts, or how he once outwitted a tank battalion with nothing but wire cutters and duct tape. I didn't realize those skills would come in handy until I met Kyle Brewer. The Carter Ranch has been here since 1927. It's 140 acres of cattle, fence posts, and legacy, right on the edge of a town that's been swallowing farmland, one HOA at a time. 5 years ago, a neighborhood called Brookstone Hills popped up on the ridge like someone dropped a golf course on top of a cornfield. Picket fences, identical mailboxes, and Karens in yoga pants who hold emotionally aggressive. Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed president for life of Brookstone Hills HOA, runs it like she's managing a Cold War embassy. Her latest hire, Kyle Brewer, a man who drives a matte black Ford F-350, wears aviators indoors, and calls himself Director of Neighborhood Security, which, by the way, is just a fancy title for mall cop with Wi-Fi. The first time I saw Kyle, he was parked directly across the only gravel access to our ranch. His truck was sideways, blocking both in and out. I figured he was lost until I walked over and tapped on the window. It rolled down slowly like a dramatic villain reveal in a Marvel movie, and there he was, late 30s, military haircut, goatee trimmed within an inch of its life, and sunglasses reflecting my confusion. "You got a problem?" he asked without saying hello. I gestured to the giant vehicle. "Yeah, this is our gate, private property. You're blocking the drive." Kyle tilted his head like a confused German shepherd. "Actually, this is designated as a community emergency access route. HOA jurisdiction. I'm authorized to park here for safety assessments." I blinked. Safety assessments of what? Our cows? He reached down, pulled out a clipboard, and started scribbling. Refusal to comply, hostile tone, potential violation of Ordinance 4.7, unauthorized obstruction of shared access. I laughed. I genuinely thought it was a joke. Then he pulled out his phone and started recording. "Just so you know," he said, adjusting his sunglasses, "you're being documented for HOA records." The camera was 2 inches from my face. "Please state your full name and reason for aggressive confrontation." I stepped back, palms up. "Man, I just want to get through my own gate. I live here. This is my family's ranch." Kyle handed me a folded paper. "This is your official warning. Non-compliance will result in escalation. You may take it up with the board." I unfolded the paper. It was printed on what looked like someone's cousin's real estate letterhead, full of vague, legal-sounding gibberish ending with, "By order of Brookstone Hills HOA Security Enforcement." I looked up. "This isn't real." Kyle grinned. "That's what they all say." When I got back to the house, Grandpa Walt was sitting on the porch sharpening a spade like he was waiting for a home invasion. I handed him the paper and explained the interaction. He read it slowly, nodded once, and slipped the notice into his shirt pocket like it was a napkin. And he looked out toward the ridge where Kyle's truck still blocked our path and said one thing: "I built airfield traps for Russian tanks in '71. Pretty sure I can handle a suburban cowboy with a parking fetish." That's when I knew this wasn't going to be just a zoning dispute. This was war. The next morning, Kyle's back, and this time he brought props. A freshly laminated sign zip-tied to our barbed wire fence read, "HOO Oversight Zone, do not alter landscape without approval." It had a poorly photoshopped logo and a watermark that said sample PDF version in the corner. I almost respected the confidence. Almost. He parked the F-350 half in, half out of the ranch entrance, clicked open a folding chair, and just sat there, sunglasses on, clipboard out, like he was TSA screening cows. For the next 5 days, Kyle escalated his performance art into something resembling actual harassment. Every morning at 6 a.m., a courtesy notice was taped to our gate. One cited livestock noise pollution. Another accused us of violating visual harmony because Grandpa hung laundry on a clothesline. One notice claimed the barn roof's rust was negatively impacting resale values for homes within line of sight. Then came the night patrols. Kyle's truck would cruise past our property around midnight, headlights off, engine rumbling low like a stalking panther with a homeowners association badge. On Friday, he stood outside the fence filming our rooster with a decibel meter app. "Just getting some data," he shouted across the pasture. Karen's very concerned about the crowing schedule. Speaking of Karen, she finally made her grand entrance that Sunday afternoon. A silver Mercedes pulled up on the gravel with all the grace of a queen inspecting her colonies. Karen Whitmore stepped out like she was allergic to dust, dressed in a linen pantsuit and wearing a sun hat that looked like it had a legal team. She looked at our land like it was a badly folded napkin. Kyle followed behind her, carrying a manila folder like a loyal intern. Grandpa met them at the gate, arms folded, face unreadable. "Mr. Carter," Karen began, as if we'd summoned her, "we'd like to discuss your encroachments." Grandpa didn't blink. "You mean my ranch?" Karen gave a tight smile. "This parcel borders Brookstone Hills, which places it under visual jurisdiction of the HOA. We've had multiple complaints: rusted equipment, wild animals, clutter." She gestured toward our tractor like it personally offended her HOA. Kyle stepped forward, handing Grandpa a document. "We've prepared a purchase offer. The board is recommending acquisition of the easement section and fence line. You'll be generously compensated, of course." Grandpa looked down at the paper, then up at Kyle. "This your signature?" "It's the board's resolution," Kyle said proudly. "You're not on the board," Grandpa replied flatly. Karen cut in, smile sharpening. "This is a chance to align your property with the community's evolving aesthetic. We're simply trying to elevate the area." Grandpa folded the paper slowly and tucked it into his back pocket. "Ma'am," he said, "you build a neighborhood next to a lion's den, and now you want the lion to wear pastels." That night, Grandpa and I sat on the back porch drinking iced tea like nothing had happened. Then he said, "You know, I used to design camouflage bridges in the desert, right?" I didn't, but I didn't interrupt. "Back in '83, we built a floating platform disguised as a fishing dock. Enemy troops tried to cross it with armored carriers. Didn't end well for them." He sipped his tea. "People like Karen and Clipboard, boy, they think control means territory, but real power, that's in the terrain. And who understands it better?" I nodded slowly, but Grandpa wasn't done. He stood, disappeared into the shed, and came back with a rusted metal lockbox. He dropped it onto the table with a thud. "Your great-grandfather surveyed this land himself. Everything they think they know about borders is about to get very, very inconvenient." When he popped the lock, the box creaked like it hadn't seen daylight in half a century. Inside, yellowed maps, handwritten property descriptions, water rights contracts from 1929, and a photo of Grandpa Walt in uniform standing next to what I could only describe as a military-grade backhoe. He pulled out a faded blueprint, smoothed it over with care, and tapped the corner. "They won a war over lines in the dirt, then they picked the wrong patch of land." And for the first time in my life, I realized my grandpa had never really retired. He'd just been waiting for the next campaign. Next up, a BBQ, a clipboard, and one very bad decision involving a rooster and a drone. You won't believe what they do at the gate. That night, while Grandpa pored over old maps and legal documents like a general reviewing war plans, I made a call to someone who actually spoke fluent legal, Riley Brooks, my girlfriend, final year law student at Pine Bluff University, currently clerking at a local firm known for land disputes and eating HOAs for breakfast. Riley had the kind of brain that turned zoning codes into bedtime stories. When I told her about Kyle Karen and the mysterious community emergency access road, she laughed. "Did he actually say that out loud with a clipboard?" I said. "So you know it's legit." Riley drove out the next morning with her laptop, legal pad, and a latte labeled HOA Slayer. She didn't even finish her coffee before she started shaking her head. "Eli, this whole thing is a joke wrapped in jargon. The Carter Ranch has a registered easement from 1958, long before Brookstone Hills HOA was even a brochure. According to county records, your family's access road is 100% private, not shared, not conditional, and definitely not under HOA jurisdiction." Grandpa, who had been leaning back in his chair, cracked the faintest smile. So clipboard boy is squatting on our dirt illegally, Riley confirmed, which means we can file for removal and damages. But wait. She tapped away on her laptop and pulled up a series of business filings. You know how Kyle claims he works for the HOA? I nodded. He doesn't. Technically, he's not on any official HOA payroll. He's contracted through a private firm, Brewer Neighborhood Integrity Solutions, LLC. That sounds fake, I said. Riley raised an eyebrow. That's because it is, Karen. Karen's daughter and Kyle's ex-wife. Grandpa let out a long whistle. So it's all one big inbred pile of nepotism at its HOA finest, Riley said. Kyle isn't enforcing anything legal. He's just the guy Karen sends when she wants to scare people with truck exhaust and fake notice. But the juiciest part came when Riley, out of curiosity and mild concern, ran Kyle's name through public court records. What she found made my skin crawl. Eli, she said, turning her screen toward me, your gatekeeper used to be a cop. Used to be? Fired 2 years ago from West Haven PD. 2 suspensions. One for excessive force, the other, she paused, then looked at me seriously, for stalking a female resident during a traffic stop. He followed her home, left notes, got caught reviewing her driver's license photo multiple times after hours. Jesus, I muttered. Grandpa's smile vanished. They fired him? They made him resign, Riley said. No charges filed, but there's a psychological evaluation attached to his file that's, let's just say, not reassuring. It was one thing to deal with a delusional HOA enforcer with an oversized truck and a power trip. It was another thing entirely to know that person had a documented history of obsessive behavior and now had unchecked access to our gate. And us. Grandpa stood up without a word and walked into the workshop. When he came back, he was carrying an old wooden sign, faded but legible. Trespassers will be photographed, prosecuted, and probably mocked. He planted it by the road and then turned to me. Time to flip the script, Eli. They've been watching us. Now we watch them. And sure enough, that afternoon, Grandpa began mounting a motion-activated trail camera on the fence, muttering something about adding infrared in case Clipboard Boy brings night vision. But just when we thought we were finally ahead, Kyle made his boldest move yet, and it involved a grill, a boom box, and 6 folding chairs set up right in our driveway. If there's one thing Kyle Brewer excels at, it's making a bad idea louder, drunker, and wrapped in a layer of fake authority. It started around noon on Saturday, just when Riley was reviewing documents in Grandpa's kitchen, and I was repairing a busted hinge on the goat pen. From the front gate came the unmistakable rumble of bass, followed by the scent of cheap lighter fluid and overcooked hot dog. Please tell me that's not a party, Riley said without looking up. I wish, I muttered, grabbing the binoculars. And there it was. Kyle's Matt Beck F-350 parked across the gate like usual, but now joined by 3 more trucks, a portable grill, 6 folding chairs, and a full cooler of Bud Light. The sign above the setup? Brookstone Hills Community Watch, BBQ and Strategy Session. We approached calmly. Well, as calmly as one can when strangers are double-fisting beers 10 feet from your cattle fence. Kyle raised a red Solo cup like he was greeting neighbors across a picket fence. Hey there, farm boy, he called. You're just in time for the brisket. HOA business, you understand. One of his buddies was trying, and failing, to balance a lawn chair on our ditch line while flipping burgers. Another dude in cargo shorts was tossing cornhole bags directly toward our electric fence. Grandpa didn't flinch. You've got 10 minutes, he said evenly. Kyle blinked. 10 minutes to what? To pack your tailgate circus and get off our land, Grandpa replied. And you can leave the trash bags full of HOA patriotism, too. Kyle laughed, sloshing beer. This is a public easement. We're within our rights. Don't make me call the sheriff. Please do, Riley cut in, holding up her phone. We'd love to clarify that with the county. On camera, with time-stamped footage. One of Kyle's goons muttered something about crazy liberals, but they didn't move. 15 minutes later, 2 sheriff cruisers pulled up, lights flashing, but instead of dispersing the HOA tailgate, one officer walked right up to Kyle and greeted him with a fist bump. Officer Brewer, the deputy nodded. Everything under control here? Riley nearly dropped her phone. Officer, she whispered. He's not, but Kyle cut in. Badge clipped to his belt like he wanted at a fair. Appreciate the quick response. Property owners getting agitated. We're de-escalating now. The deputy turned to Grandpa. Sir, I'm going to need you to remain on your side of the line. What line? Grandpa asked flatly. This is my driveway. There's been a lot of confusion about boundaries out here, the deputy said, scratching his neck like the paperwork was already giving him a headache. Let's try to keep it civil. Kyle gave me a wink, a literal wink, like this was all one big HOA-sponsored prank. Back at the house, Riley was furious. He impersonated an officer. That's a felony. I have it on video, the badge, the truck, everything. She filed an official complaint with the sheriff's office that evening. The next day, she got a call from a sergeant who sounded like he was halfway through a donut. We don't show any active complaint involving Mr. Brewer, he said. According to the log, he responded to a civil disturbance initiated by the property owner. He's not a cop, Riley snapped. He's a disgraced former officer with no legal authority. The line went silent for a beat. Ma'am, we're not in a position to evaluate employment histories. If you'd like to submit additional documents, Internal Affairs is available Monday through Thursday. That night, things got worse. Riley's phone buzzed at 2:07 a.m., an anonymous number. The first message was just a photo, her car parked outside our house, clearly taken from the road. The next, nice dress at the hearing, red suits you. Riley froze. I read over her shoulder and felt my stomach turn. We looked out the window. Kyle's truck wasn't there, but fresh tire tracks glistened in the moonlight. Grandpa walked in, saw our faces, and didn't ask questions. He just opened the gun cabinet and handed me a motion sensor floodlight. Tomorrow, he said, voice like gravel, we light up the whole damn front yard. But the message wouldn't stop, and Kyle's next move wouldn't just cross a line, it would erase it entirely. By the time the second tire on Riley's car went flat, the message was loud and clear, even if Kyle never signed his name. It happened in the daylight in a public parking lot outside the local library. She walked out holding a stack of zoning records, only to find both passenger side tires slashed with something sharp enough to leave a signature. Tucked under the windshield wiper was a napkin from Sal's Diner, scribbled with one sentence. Maybe take the bus next time. We brought it home in silence. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just opened her laptop, typed a detailed incident report, and uploaded it into a folder she had titled, If I Disappear. That night, someone threw 2 small rocks at our front window around 3 o'clock. Not enough to break glass, just enough to make sure we knew they'd been there. Grandpa didn't turn on the porch light. He didn't grab the shotgun. He just sat there in the dark with a thermos of coffee and said, this isn't harassment anymore. This is siege warfare. He spent time in places where people used sound, light, and fear like tools. And Kyle, for all his small-town stupidity, was pulling straight from that manual. He's not trying to win, Grandpa muttered. He's trying to make us react. So we did the opposite. Grandpa took down 2 of the trail cameras. He let the motion lights burn out without replacing them. He even moved the for sale sign he'd kept in the barn out to the road, weathered, crooked, and sad. You pretending to sell the ranch? I asked. No, he said, straight-faced. I'm pretending to fold. Let them think we're cornered, scared. People like Kyle get sloppy when they think they've won. Riley wasn't convinced. What if pretending attracts the wrong kind of attention? That's the point, Grandpa said, eyes gleaming. Let the rats come to the cheese. Then we shut the trap. For the next few days, we played our parts. Riley started parking at her sister's house again. I stopped waving to neighbors. Grandpa walked slower, stopped fixing things around the fence. Kyle noticed, of course he did, and right on cue, he escalated. On Thursday morning, I woke up to find something new at the end of our gravel drive. A folding table, 2 camping chairs, a pop-up canopy tent, and a small battery-powered fan. Sitting beneath it was Kyle wearing aviators, sipping iced tea from a thermos shaped like a bullet. Behind him was a bright yellow sign duct taped to a metal pole. A temporary security station, station in Brookstone Hills, HOA Patrol, in smaller letters beneath. Monitoring suspicious activity, 24 surveillance, please wave hello. I stepped outside and just stared at him. He waved like we were old friends meeting at a farmer's market. Good morning, partner, he called out. Just making sure everything's safe out here. Heard about some property crimes in the area. You mean the ones you committed? I said. He grinned wider. Let's not point fingers, farm boy. We're all trying to keep things neighborly. You've got your goats. I've got my mission. When I didn't respond, he tapped his walkie-talkie and whispered, base, visual, confirmed. Target, is active. I wanted to punch him so badly my teeth hurt, but Grandpa's voice echoed in my head. Don't react. Let him step into the trap. So I nodded, smiled faintly, and walked back inside. But Riley, she was done pretending. That afternoon, I found her on the back porch with a man I'd never met. Tall, sharp-suited, with a face like he billed by the second. This is Carl Pennington, Riley said, flipping her laptop open. He's with the state's Private Security Oversight Board. Guess who's getting an unannounced audit this week? Carl smiled politely. Let's just say I don't like unauthorized uniforms, especially when they sit outside properties they don't own. Grandpa appeared behind them, holding a box of old paperwork. Y'all come inside, he said calmly. There's something in these old deeds I think you'll find illuminating. But Kyle wasn't done playing soldier. And the next move, let's just say it came with a drone, a megaphone, and the phrase, stand your ground. That night, after Riley introduced Mr. Pennington to Grandpa's war chest of property maps and licensing records, something shifted. Grandpa hadn't just been collecting documents, he'd been assembling ammunition. While Pennington jotted notes with a lawyer's poker face, Grandpa unrolled a faded topographical map across the kitchen table, tapping a thick red line that ran parallel to our gate. This, he said, is the original drainage ditch surveyed in 1933. It was dry for years, until I spent the last rainy season quietly rechanneling runoff back through it. Legally, it's now a functional waterway. I blinked. So, that weird mud path Kyle keeps parking on? Grandpa grinned. Welcome to Operation Creek Bluff. Riley leaned in. Whoa, wait, are you saying Kyle's parked on a ditch, right? Not just any ditch, Grandpa replied, flipping open a manila folder. Under Texas law, that classifies as a reclaimed seasonal flow route. Any non-agricultural vehicle left there more than 72 hours without authorization can be declared abandoned and removed. No tow warning required. And here's the fun part. It doesn't have to be running water, just wet enough to be functionally active. Riley gave a low whistle. That's evil. I love it. It gets better, Grandpa said, pulling out a faded legal notice. This land was grandfathered in with drainage sovereignty. We don't just own the ditch, we control it. And I have 10 years of floodplain surveys to back it up. We spent the next 48 hours staging the scene. I built a low-split rail fence around the ditch, weathered just enough to look old. We posted a regulation-size sign behind the fence line that read, "The waterway, authorized vehicles only, trespasser subject to impound." It was deliberately subtle, placed just out of Kyle's daily line of sight unless he got curious, which we knew he wouldn't. Arrogance was our best camouflage. Meanwhile, Grandpa regraded the ditch to look passive but functional. A slow trickle from a diverted hose kept water moving just enough to count. Riley called it petty irrigation with legal teeth. That Sunday morning, Kyle rolled in late, probably hung over from whatever HOA strategic tailgate he'd hosted the night before. He parked right where we wanted him, 2 wheels half dipped in the drainage path, the other 2 firmly on mud. He didn't notice a fence, just see the sign. Just leaned back in his chair under that pop-up canopy, sipping tea and talking into his toy walkie-talkie like he was guarding Fort Knox. That's when Riley got the text. Untraceable number, all caps. 24 hours to walk away from the Carter. Boy, or your bar exam results get lost in the system. She stared at the screen, pale but steady. He's done digging. Now he's threatening to bury. Can you trace it? I asked. I'm already on it, she said, copying the metadata to a flash drive. If he messes with anything tied to the state bar, it becomes a federal offense. He's too dumb to know how deep he's going. That afternoon, while Kyle sat roasting in his folding chair like a mall cop on a tailgate mission, Grandpa added a final touch. He stood across the road and took photos from 3 angles. Thumbtapped, geolocated, and filed in a folder titled Junk Vehicle on Private Easement Evidence for Disposal. Kyle waved like a pageant queen. Hope you're getting my good side, old-timer. Grandpa tipped his hat, every inch of it, son. And with that, we had everything we needed, location, signage, documentation, and a man too self-satisfied to notice he'd just parked himself into a legal corner. But if Kyle thought he could intimidate Riley with threats, he was about to find out what happens when a law student stops documenting. and starts fighting back. And trust me, her idea of revenge came with subpoenas and steel. It was Riley who noticed it first. Sunday morning. The kitchen smelled like burnt toast and quiet tension. She pulled the curtain aside and muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." I joined her at the window. Kyle was back, but this time he didn't come alone. 4 trucks total, 2 of them blocking the entire gravel drive. One guy brought a Bluetooth speaker blaring classic rock like it was some sort of patriotic parade. Another unfolded a camp chair and propped up a clipboard labeled "Surveillance Log, Carter Threat Activity." Kyle, of course, stood dead center with a smug grin, arms crossed like he'd just conquered Normandy. His shiny black Ram was parked square in the ditch, turn trap, tires half sunken in the legally questionable mud. I glanced at Grandpa. Is this the moment? He didn't answer. He just stood up, cracked his knuckles, and headed for the barn. 10 minutes later, the rumble echoed down the field like thunder from an angry god. Our old yellow Caterpillar excavator roared to life, trailing dust and a promise. Grandpa emerged from the barn wearing his faded army helmet, aviator sunglasses, and a look that said he'd waited decades for this. As he rolled toward the front gate, the trucks grew silent. Even the guy with the Bluetooth speaker paused his playlist. Kyle stepped forward, already reaching for his phone. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What's this? A threat? Grandpa slowed the excavator and shouted over the engine, "Under Texas Code 6183.011, this vehicle has been abandoned on a private drainage easement for over 72 hours. I am executing my legal right to impound and remove said property." Kyle laughed, almost relieved. "That's not your call, old man. This isn't your land anymore." I stepped out with my phone. "Already live streaming. Actually," I said, flipping the camera, "we have deeds, maps, timestamps, and video footage proving otherwise. Say hi to the internet, Kyle." Viewers poured in. Comments scrolled faster than I could read. Grandpa positioned the excavator bucket directly beneath the front end of Kyle's Ram. "You touch my truck," Kyle warned, "and I'll have you arrested for destruction of property." "Funny," Grandpa said. "That's what the last guy told me in Nam, right before I turned his Jeep into a bridge anchor." And with that, he lifted the truck like it weighed nothing. Rear tires dangled midair, mud dripping from the undercarriage. The silence was biblical. Then, from the distance, sirens. 3 sheriff units arrived within minutes, lights flashing, but this time it wasn't the usual crew. Leading them was Deputy Castor, a no-nonsense woman with a clipboard and mirrored shades sharp enough to cut drywall. She walked straight to Kyle. "Mr. Brewer, drop the badge, now." "What badge?" Kyle asked, already fumbling with his belt. "The one you've been using to impersonate a peace officer. We've got the footage, the reports, and the complaint from State Security Oversight. You're under arrest for impersonation, stalking, and criminal harassment." Kyle turned red, then white. Karen can explain, but he never finished that sentence. Because of that exact moment, a silver SUV pulled up and outstepped Karen Whitmore, dressed in pearls and panic. She looked at the chaos, trucks, excavator, cops, cameras, and tried to reset her tone like she was walking into a garden brunch. "Officers, there's been some misunderstanding." Deputy Castor turned to her. "Ma'am, are you the one who authorized Mr. Brewer to conduct enforcement on behalf of the Brookstone Hills HOA?" Karen hesitated. 1 breath. 2. Then, "No, I never officially authorized any enforcement activity. Kyle was acting on his own. He took initiative beyond what we discussed." Grandpa raised his eyebrows. "Sounds like you just threw your little knight under the HOA bus." Kyle snapped. "You lied to me? You told me I was the law here." "I said you could monitor," Karen hissed. "I didn't say you could play Rambo on someone's drainage ditch." The deputies cuffed Kyle before he could say another word. As they read him his rights, Grandpa swung the excavator arm slowly, gently, over Sweet Bluff Creek. The Ram hovered like a warning sign. I shouted over the roar, "Any last words, Kyle?" He screamed, "You'll regret this. I'll sue. You hear me?" Splash. The truck hit the water like poetic justice in HD. Mud flew, a tire bobbed to the surface. Comments on the live stream exploded. Grandpa lowered his bucket, dusted off his gloves, and said, "Water finds its level." The deputies didn't even blink. Deputy Castor tipped her hat. "Mr. Carter, we'll follow up with paperwork." That was the cleanest execution of civil salvage I've seen in 20 years. Karen, now visibly sweating, turned to leave. We'll be in touch about damages, she snapped. You're going to hear from our legal team. Riley appeared beside me, holding her phone. Please do. I'd love to file a countersuit. My bar results just came in. I passed. Karen's face twitched. Congratulations, she muttered, like it hurt. Kyle was in cuffs, the ram was wet, and Karen's crown was cracked, but Grandpa wasn't done. Not until every piece of their scheme collapsed under its own fake authority, and trust me, the final nail was coming from inside the HOA itself. They sentenced Kyle Brewer to 4 years in county prison. Officially, it was for impersonating an officer, criminal trespass, stalking, and harassment. Unofficially, it was for thinking a badge from Etsy and a lifted truck made him king of Cedar Hill. He cried in court, claimed it was all a misunderstanding, said he was just trying to keep the neighborhood safe. The judge didn't buy it, neither did the gallery, which burst into applause when the gavel came down. Grandpa just leaned over to me and whispered, "That boy thought he was the storm. Turns out we were the flood." Sharon Whitmore resigned 2 days later, not with a press release, but with a bitter letter emailed at 2 a.m. blaming community misalignment and a coordinated character assassination. Her resignation was followed swiftly by a vote, this time by actual HOA members. They overhauled the bylaws, revoked all executive privileges, added a rotating election cycle, and rewrote the charter to prohibit any future security enforcement roles unless sanctioned by real law enforcement. Brookstone Hills became a neighborhood again, not a kingdom, and Cedar Hill, it started to breathe again. 3 months later, Riley opened the first pro bono legal clinic in town, tucked between a feed store and a bakery. She named it Creekside Legal, a little nod to where it all went down. Her first case, helping a local mechanic sue his HOA for demanding he build a shrubbery privacy barrier around his garage. She won in 2 hearings. Word got around fast. By the end of the summer, folks from 3 counties over were asking for consults. As for Grandpa, he went back to early mornings and strong coffee. But he left that excavator parked in plain view just in case anyone needed reminding. He also built something else right by the bank of Sweet Bluff Creek, near the spot where Kyle's truck made its final splash. He set up a handmade wooden sign, burned into the grain with a soldering pen with the words, "The deeper your roots, the harder you are to dig out." No logos, no names, just truth carved by a man who'd seen what happened when you try to bulldoze legacy with paperwork and intimidation. And beside that sign, a picnic table he built with leftover fence planks, worn smooth by sun and rain. Every month, Riley and I host a cookout there. Just a few folding chairs, cornbread, lemonade, and stories that get louder the longer the sun sets. Folks show up from all around, ranchers, city folks, HOA survivors. No one brings clipboards. Sometimes we joke that if anyone shows up in pastel polo shirts and mirrored sunglasses, they have to sit in the mud as penance, but mostly we just laugh because we earned it. There's a peace in Cedar Hill now that didn't exist before, not because the noise stopped or the drama ended, but because people remembered what community actually means. It's not about ornamental shrubs or silent streets or banning wind chimes for acoustic purity. It's about looking out for each other, about standing up even when the other guy has a badge and a bullhorn. And maybe, just maybe, it's about remembering that sometimes the loudest justice doesn't come from shouting, but from lifting something heavy and letting gravity do the rest. Some people build fences to keep others out. Grandpa built trenches to teach them where the lines really are. But what came next? Well, let's just say Cedar Hill hadn't seen its last Karen. And this time, she brought a drone. In a world where rules are twisted by the loudest clipboard, it's easy to feel small. But this story proves something better. You don't need power to have authority. Just roots, courage, and a plan that makes noise without shouting. Walt didn't fight back with fists. He fought with maps, logic, and a 40-year-old excavator. Riley didn't run. She built a legal wall taller than any. He learned that sometimes the most powerful revenge is showing them you're not afraid. So if you're out there dealing with your own Karen or clipboard warrior, just remember, law beats loud, legacy beats leverage, and sometimes the creek will do the talking for you. Drop a comment if you've ever tangled with a wild HOA, like if you'd ride shotgun in that excavator. Subscribe for more tales where petty meets poetic justice. And remember, don't park where you don't belong.